Millionaire laughs at Janitor until he discovers his autistic son's amazing JOY in bubbles. Mark Sanders, a tech mogul sitting on a mountain of wealth, sped down the palm-lined streets of Los Angeles in his sleek black Lamborghini, feeling the thrill of superiority wash over him. But the scene before him caught him off guard. A small boy, no more than 6, danced in a commotion of shimmering bubbles, giggling as they drifted and burst like fleeting dreams. "Look at that," he scoffed, a chuckle escaping his lips. "Wasted potential. Must be nice to live in a bubble." The boy's exuberance was laughable to Mark, who seldom acknowledged those outside his towering glass office. To him, the janitors like Tom, who cleaned the floors he strolled across, were mere figures in the background of his opulent existence, hardly worth noticing. Yet, life had always revolved around winning for Mark. Stock prices, tech launches, blooming news articles detailing his latest successes filled his reality. But there, in a moment of state-of-the-art luxury, he felt strangely hollow. His recent ill-boding family tensions, whispers of a marriage strained beyond repair, lurked beneath his bravado. The laughter of that boy momentarily interrupted a carefully crafted narrative, highlighting life as trivial pleasures he had long deemed beneath him. But when he drove away, the unease grew. Weeks crawled by until an unbearable silence and isolation engulfed Mark's life. His son, Jake, faced a devastating accident that delivered a crushing blow to Mark's meticulously constructed world. Once vibrant laughter that permeated their home turned into secrets kept behind closed doors, colored by a profound withdrawal. Mark found himself haunted by that boy, the one chasing bubbles. Bubbles, the very symbols of fleeting happiness, evoked familiar feelings, the joy of innocence that his own son once shared. Desperation clawed at him. In that foggy aftermath, Mark hesitated, battling daunting thoughts about reaching out to Tom. Why should he? He had crafted a life far removed from the janitor, claiming he had no use for such a connection. But another part of him felt an unsettling draw to that world. He was a father too, and was longing for understanding, for a chance to connect with someone who seemed to embrace the simplicity he had dismissed. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Mark wrestled internally, aware that reaching out could expose him to vulnerability and emotion he rarely embraced. Tom's life was filled with ordinary struggles, challenges Mark had little tolerance for. The thought of surrendering to those sentiments made his skin crawl. Instead, he picked up the phone, fingers trembling at the barriers he needed to cross. But what could he offer in such a connection? Could he even find the words? Standing in the shadow of his office one Saturday, he exhaled sharply, knowing he was on the threshold of something vital. As he looked across the courtyard, Sam was there once more, blowing bubbles, this time with more than just laughter. He held a secret joy that defied the tumult Mark felt in the pit of his stomach. The boy embodied everything he had lost. Every burst of exuberance revealed a truth too stark to ignore. Mark was paralyzed, simultaneously yearning for connection and terrified of the transformation he was beginning to face. The rift yawned wider. Would he step across the threshold or remain enshrined in his ivory tower? Those iridescent bubbles floated just out of reach as he stood trapped, teetering between an unsatisfactory past and a hazy hope for redemption. Would he dare to embrace the joys of his son, or would fear keep him forever distant? As Mark stood frozen, the weight of his choices bore down on him like a heavy cloud, threatening to engulf him. The laughter of that little boy, Sam, floated through the air, punctuating the silence of his thoughts. He dug deep within himself, grappling with the echoes of a life previously defined by triumphs over challenges, each more formidable than the last. Yet, now, he felt defeated in ways he had never known. His achievements seemed trivial in light of Jake's struggles, which he had been too blinded by hubris to fully comprehend. With apprehension rippling through him, Mark glanced once more at Sam. The boy's innocent joy was intoxicating. Bubbles danced around him, bursting into iridescent droplets that caught the sunlight. It was a stark contrast to the cold, sterile confines of his own corporate life. The reality kicked open a door long sealed shut in Mark's heart, a longing for connection overshadowed by fear of what that connection might require. "Maybe I'm not as far removed from that world as I think," he muttered under his breath, a realization beginning to fester. Slowly, he lifted his phone again, breath hitching in his throat as he found Tom's number scrolling across the screen. Did he dare press call? He could feel the gravity of that decision sinking in the weight of his own perceptions and prejudices. With a swift exhalation, he hit the call icon, ear pressed against the cool glass. As the phone rang, a part of him grimaced, anticipating rejection, or worse, pity. He despised the thought of being judged by someone he had deemed irrelevant. In that moment, he desperately clung to the very notion that each ring opened up a door to the unfamiliar, a place where he wasn't confined by wealth or status. "Hello?" Tom's voice resonated with warmth, perhaps unaware of the meticulous walls crumbling on the other end. Mark's grip on the phone tightened, heart hammering wildly. "Hi, Tom. It's Mark Sanders." His voice was wobbly, stripped of the confident bravado he wore like armor. Silence stretched as both men considered the implications of such an introduction. Hi, Mr. Sanders. What can I do for you?" The formality in Tom's voice stung, but it also ignited something within Mark, a flicker of vulnerability that was, at once, terrifying and exhilarating. He hesitated, wrestling with the tremors of self-doubt. Did he really mean to traverse this uncharted territory? "I wanted to talk. About Jake. That's my son." A palpable exchange hung between them, and Tom's breath hitched on the other end. "Yeah, of course," he replied carefully. "He has really been struggling." "Struggling," Mark repeated, the words slipping through the cracks of his carefully constructed facade. "I know I haven't been there for him. I don't even know how to be there. Sometimes, just showing up is enough." Tom's response was grounded, instinctively patient, a calming solace amid Mark's whirlpool of chaos. At that moment, a flicker of determination surged within Mark. This brief conversation was a catalyst, one tiny step towards embracing a relationship he had shunned. With each word, he felt himself edging closer to confronting the daunting realities of fatherhood and vulnerability. Can you help me?" he asked, more hopeful than he had anticipated being in that moment. "Absolutely," Tom replied, warmth bridging their disparate worlds. "Anytime you're ready." Frustration and fear lingered like shadows, but for the first time, Mark felt an ember of hope glowing in the depths of his heart. He could no longer return to the person he had been, and though the journey ahead felt labyrinthine and uncertain, it was a path he needed to walk. "Thank you." The sincerity flowed through his words like unspent sunlight. He felt a newfound sense of direction forming, but it was only the beginning. As he hung up the phone, Sam frolicked in the distance, bubbles now bursting around him in a radiant cascade. He needed to act. It was imperative he learn to be the father Jake deserved. But how? The question lingered, reverberating in his mind as he looked down the path he had committed to explore. At that moment, he realized that the most significant change of all was yet to come. He had a call to action, but what would be the first courageous step he was willing to take? A cloud of uncertainty hung over Mark as he stared downward, his thoughts racing. The laughter of children splashing nearby suddenly struck a nerve, a vivid contrast to his internal turmoil. He understood now that the journey he had just embarked upon wouldn't be easy. It would be riddled with confrontation and revelation. Still, it was a path worth treading. But what shape would that first step take? Time pressed on, urging him to act. He resolved to pay a visit to Jake the following weekend. The idea of engaging with his son filled him with dread and an unexpected excitement. What would he say? What could he offer him? These questions churned in his mind, wrestling against his fear of inadequacy. Mark returned to his loft, every corner echoing with the emptiness he often housed within himself. He moved to his desk, a sanctuary of productivity cluttered with reports, numbers, and deadlines that no longer meant anything to him. As he sat, he began to doodle on a notepad, each swirl forming images of a boy's smile and a father's longing to connect. Suddenly, a potent idea struck him. What if he turned this engagement into a project, a learning experience for both him and Jake? The more Mark brainstormed, the clearer his vision became. He would bring Jake to a local community park that boasted a playground, complete with swings and slides, along with an open field for running wild. He envisioned saturating their day with laughter and bubbles, the whimsical joy that had so moved him watching Sam. It was about creating a world where Jake felt safe and cherished, free from judgment. Planning expeditions, he reinforced the commitment to bring along various activities, art supplies, toys, and unique sensory items. It was imperative he prepared adequately. This visit wasn't merely a duty. It was a tender chance to ignite a connection he had long thought lost. And yet, deep down, he felt the weight of guilt remain, a persistent shadow reminding him of the myriad of missed moments. He knew he could not erase the past, but could forge a new future. With renewed determination, he grabbed his phone again, dialing Tom's number. It rang and rang, each sound a countdown to their forthcoming collaboration to aid Jake. "Hey, Mark," Tom finally answered, the warmth still iridescent, as though his very tone glowed. "Can we talk more about Jake? I want to ensure I'm supporting him in the right way," Mark stated, feeling the gravity of every word. "Of course. What are you thinking?" Tom replied, eagerness flashing through the line. Mark detailed his plans, tentatively sharing his vision of the park outing sprinkled with activities. It was freeing, almost liberating to verbalize his hopes. Tom's feedback was reassuring, encouraging Mark to consider the ways they could engage with Jake on his terms. "Keep it simple," Tom advised. "Jake thrives when he can connect physically and interactively. If bubbles bring him joy, then go for it. That connection might be the gateway for him." Reassured by Tom's guidance, Mark felt as though his tide of dread receded a little. With each conversation, his apprehension became elucidated into clarity. But that clarity wasn't without trepidation. What if Jake didn't reciprocate? What if he remained distant and uninterested? As the week drew closer to their planned outing, Mark's anxiety began to resurface. He prepared himself psychologically for every eventuality. Could he open his heart wide enough to accept rejection? Or perhaps it would lead him to an even deeper understanding of his son's world, a realm filled with joy he had yet to comprehend. The plan unfolded like a carefully crafted blueprint of hope, a first step in healing the chasm their separation had carved. On the day of the park trip, Mark stood before his reflection, looking for the resolve he hoped to ignite within himself. Would he be the father Jake wanted and needed? As he stepped outside, heart racing, he thought, today was not merely a visitation, it was an awakening. He would confront many layers of his character, feelings untapped and fears ignored. And as he drove towards the park, the heaviness of what lay ahead mingled with a burning desire to redefine himself. The moment of truth was on the horizon, and with it, a realization dawned on him. This day would be more than just about Jake. It would mark the genesis of who he could become. Was he ready for the journey that lay ahead, where discovery could fracture him or mold him anew? The answer awaited him at the park, an impending confrontation that could either bridge or widen the distance between father and son. Would he be able to embrace the opportunity to reconnect? Or would he falter, too burdened by the past? The sun illuminated the park with an invigorating brightness, an unexpected burst of warmth that amplified Mark's nervous energy. He parked his car and, once unbuckled, hesitated for a moment. Could he really pull this off? Doubts gnawed at him, rattling through his core like a persistent whisper. The sights and sounds of the playground, a melody of children's laughter and a distant dog barking, were not merely pleasurable distractions. They were reminders of the love he wished to rekindle. Stepping onto the grass, he meticulously adjusted his bag strapped to his shoulder, filled with assorted supplies meant to entertain and inspire Jake. The sight of the playground beckoning him almost felt mocking. What if Jake didn't want to play? What if his son just saw a stranger in him? Each thought spiraled, feeding his anxiety. That a sudden burst of laughter redirected Mark's focus. He spotted a small group of children chasing after bubbles that danced through the air as if in constant flight. The sight caught Mark off guard. Underneath that cascade of shimmering orbs was a primal, contagious joy. Could something as simple as bubbles spark a connection? As he wandered closer, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Tom. "Remember, Mark, it's about being present. Don't overthink what needs to happen. Just listen to Jake." The reminder brought a moment of clarity. He had to let go of his expectations to create some miraculous bonding moment. Instead, he focused on simply being a father trying to engage with his son. Just breathe, he reminded himself, moving toward the designated meeting spot by the swings. He rehearsed a few opening lines, but found himself tossing them aside. In that moment, authenticity mattered more than scripted dialogue, and then he saw Jake. The boy approached, slowly but deliberately, with wide, curious eyes. He seemed to take in everything, the swings gently swaying, the laughter filling the air, the glimmering bubbles swirling past him as they caught the light. Mark swallowed hard, every apprehension rushing back as he dug deep inside for courage. "Hey, buddy," Mark called out with a tentative wave, his heart pounding as he crouched down to Jake's level. He could feel the pressure of expectations build as he awaited a response. Jake's gaze flitted between his father and the errant Bubbles, a flicker of recognition crossing his features. "Bubbles," he exclaimed, the words spilling out with excitement like sunlight breaking through clouds. That single reaction sent a wave of relief coursing through Mark. "Exactly," Mark smiled, pulling a bottle of bubble solution from his bag, his hands shaking slightly. "Want to try this?" Jake nodded, his eyes lit with enthusiasm. As Mark showed him how to dip the wand and blow through it, something inside him shifted. Each bubble that floated into the air encapsulated his hopes, dreams, and fears, creating ephemerally beautiful representations of their potential connection. They spent what felt like hours in bubble-filled bliss. Each inflated orb that drifted away held Mark's fears of failure, frustration, and longing. For the first time in a long while, he began to drown in the joy of the moment rather than suffocate in his anxiety. Even Jake's initial shyness and hesitance seemed to melt away, replaced by laughter. "Look," Jake shouted, pointing as a bubble glided unpredictably towards the sun, reflecting multiple colors. Mark's heart swelled as he realized how simple, yet profound this shared moment felt. They weren't merely performing a task. They were creating memories, active participants in each other's joy. But a thought loomed in Mark's mind. How long could this last? What if reality seeped back in after this moment? Would Jake retreat behind the walls he had built? A storm of uncertainty loomed over him. For now, however, he reveled in the laughter, the unguarded beauty of their moment together. Could he build on this small breakthrough to face tougher challenges alongside his son? As the bubbles began to diminish, so did Mark's clarity. Would today be a turning point, or merely another fleeting day in their tangled emotional journey? With the playful shimmer of bubbles still dancing in the air, a new layer of anxiety and anticipation unfurled in Mark's chest. Whatever assurance he had taken in the moment felt tentative. The next step could break the spell, or deepen their bond forever. Would he be courageous enough to explore beyond this joyful allowance, into the uncharted territories of fatherhood? Would this day grant him the insight he needed to truly resonate with Jake? The path forward lay uncertain, but it urged him onward with every heartbeat. Mark's thoughts swirled like the last few bubbles caught in the sunlight, glistening yet fragile, as he knelt in front of Jake. Amidst their laughter, a thought whispered insistently in the back of his mind. They had unlocked something tender today, but could it withstand the weight of reality? Jake, momentarily distracted by the glimmering soap bubbles, began to chase them anew, his little fingers reaching out with unadulterated glee. Mark watched, a mix of pride and trepidation churning within him. The boy's spontaneity tugged at Mark's heartstrings, but doubt soon anchored itself back in. This joy felt so light, yet their lives were steeped in complexities that could threaten even the most buoyant moments. What if I don't know how to keep this going? Mark questioned internally, fighting against the shrinking solace of the joyful, shared moment. Each day with Jake had taught him that it wasn't just the joyful pauses that mattered, it was the consistent rhythms of connection woven through the ordinary days. He recognized the challenge looming before him. "Hey Jake, do you want to do something else fun?" Mark suggested, trying to harness the momentum that had begun to build. It was time to take a step further, to venture into territory where they could cement this budding bond into something more than mere bubbles. Jake turned to face him, his innocent face full of eagerness. "What? How about we build a rocket out of these plastic bottles?" Mark felt a spark ignite in his chest. The idea erupted from a forgotten memory of science projects he'd once enjoyed. With Jake's enthusiasm still fresh in the air, he decided it was now or never to forge ahead, to show him that discovery extended far beyond the ephemeral enjoyment of bubbles. Yeah, can we make it fly? Jake's eyes widened, mirroring the excitement. Mark grinned and started rummaging through his bag. Absolutely, but we need to work together. It'll be our project. He pulled out the supplies, laying them out on the grass, the empty bottles, tape, and a few colorful markers to draw fins and decorate their creation. As they began arranging the components, Mark noticed how his son took charge. Jake instinctively pointed out where he wanted the wings to go, his small hands instinctively making designs on the bottles. Watching him take ownership filled Mark with a sense of awe. Excitement rapidly replaced anxiety. Here was hydration of a different kind, one that nourished their connection through collaboration. Mark found himself falling into a rhythm, assisting Jake as he drew and decorated with intent. Each brushstroke felt like a building block in their relationship. As they glued the pieces together, Mark recalled the words Tom had shared earlier. Just listen to Jake. It wasn't just about words. It was about creating space for Jake's voice, his excitement, and his perspective. But beneath Mark's infectious energy, an underlying current of worry festered. Was he really capable of sustaining this? Every moment of joy unsettled him deeper, as if he were bound to disrupt it with the complexities of real life, the unanswered questions about their future. After they finished, the proud glimmer in Jake's eyes proved infectious. Look, Dad, time to make it go, Jake declared, evidently missing how much the process had meant. The childcare center had frustrated them both too often, suffocated by rules and drawn back by burdens. But today felt like an unscripted breakthrough. The best part is just beginning, buddy, Mark replied with a laugh. He grabbed a small bottle of baking soda and vinegar, indicators of childhood magic, and guided Jake through the launching process. The mixture fizzled, their laughter erupting as the rocket jet propelled itself. It mirrored a burst of their newfound connection. Forcing a smile onto his face, Mark felt the weight in his chest lessen as they cheered at the fizzing chaos. But as Jake's face illuminated in sheer delight, shadowed fears still tightened the grip of reality. Would they be able to find a way back to this point again? As the rocket's fizzing began to die down, an undeniable question surged forward in Mark's mind. How would he carry this moment beyond the playground? The air felt heavy with anticipation, charged with new possibilities, but laced with the reticent shadows of uncertainties. Mark caught Jake's gaze once more, his heart swaying left and right as he realized that holding on might prove just as challenging as letting go. He must decide what tools he would wield to nurture this precious bond, what paths he would choose to grow alongside his son through the trials ahead. Would he find clarity and purpose as they navigated the larger challenges waiting just beyond this serene moment? Or would the uncertainties of their unique journey undermine everything they built today? Mark's mind raced with the remnants of the moment, the echoes of laughter hanging just beyond reach. As they left the playground, he felt both buoyed by the joyful chaos and haunted by an invisible specter of doubt. How could he leverage this experience, turn ephemeral magic into a sustainable foundation? That night, sitting on the edge of Jake's bed after story time, Mark watched his son droop with sleep, his cherubic face glowing peacefully in the dim light. Memories of the day's triumph replayed like a movie in his head, the rocket launching, Jake's laughter cutting through the mundane day-to-day worries. Yet, despite the soft warmth radiating from this innocent figure, Mark's heart still felt constricted by the looming uncertainties of tomorrow. He felt an urge to jot down ideas in a notebook he used for brainstorming. Would drawing from the day's experience for a daily routine help maintain their connection? Eagerly, he opened his notebook, struggling to condense his hopes and fears into actionable steps. Daily projects, he wrote down, his pen scratching against the page. Things that make him smile. Science experiments. Outdoor activities. Crafting together. Each line etched into the paper held the weight of responsibility, creating a plan to ensure Jake felt empowered and cherished, like he had that very afternoon. But the words betrayed him, crumbling under the reality that routines were often dictated by chaos rather than design. The moonlight crept through the window, illuminating the drawings Jake had made. A newfound determination flickered to life within Mark. He would harness this spark of commitment to adventure and growth. Tomorrow would be different, it needed to be. He envisioned returning to the playground, but this time as a different father. Determined, Mark crafted a checklist for himself, an evolving series of intentions that he could refer to listening more intently, asking open-ended questions, facilitating his son's creative impulses rather than dominating them. The thought propelled him forward. He wanted Jake to thrive, to know his father supported every whim and imagination. The possibility of a fresh beginning fueled a restless energy in Mark. He decided to wake up early and create a surprise for Jake. By morning, he had drawn a huge outline of a rocket on a large piece of cardboard and filled it with colorful, hand-drawn stars and planets. The idea was to transform their living room into a makeshift space center for the day. As he revealed the surprise to Jake, Mark felt a swell of pride. "Look what I made, buddy. Our very own rocket." Jake's eyes widened, marveling at the transformation. "Wow, Dad, can we go to space?" The enthusiasm radiated off his body, momentarily quieting Mark's apprehensions. "Yes, we can build a whole mission. Let us create an adventure." As their mission unfolded with laughter, they navigated through pretend wormholes, making vital decisions about fuel, glitter, powdered sugar, whatever gave their plans a glint of reality. Yet, amidst this flight of imagination, the undercurrent of reality tugged at Mark. Would this momentum carry beyond today, or would they inevitably return to the turbulent formula of life that often overshadowed such play? As the day wore on, the rockets launched, the planets mapped, and much laughter filled the air. Mark sensed that genuine courage blossomed through vulnerability. He was no longer merely marking time in Jake's life, but rather stepping into a new chapter forged by shared creativity. But as their last rocket fizzled out, Jake turned to him with wide eyes full of wonder. "Can we do this every day, Dad?" The unassuming request poured into the cracks of Mark's heart, a gentle reminder that every ordinary moment has monumental potential when nurtured with intention. Yet, the weight of a commitment loomed larger in his mind. These activities felt like fleeting pockets of joy, each requiring nurturing care to bloom. "How about we try?" Mark replied, a soft smile warming his expression. Inside, he felt the pressure of a decision echo. How would he sustain this newfound promise, keep the joy alive without deviation or disruption? The shadows of doubt were relentless, but for now, he had accepted that each step taken with Jake was a lesson in growth. But questions lingered: what obstacles awaited tomorrow? Would he falter amidst the challenges? Mark wasn't yet certain of his path, but one thing was clear: there was no turning back. The day would serve as motivation, yet doubts loomed just as heavy in allowing this transformation to take root. The next test awaited. Would the world allow him to hold on to this thread of connection, or would the complexities they both faced come creeping back in? The sun streamed through the kitchen window, the soft light illuminating the makeshift rocket that had transformed their living room. Mark watched as Jake diligently colored bright patterns and designs around their cardboard spaceship. A sense of fulfillment washed over him, but it was tainted by nagging uncertainty. How would he balance this newfound commitment to adventure against the backdrop of his unpredictable work life? With thoughts racing, he moved to the kitchen table and typed up a list of activities that could further their imaginative forays. Science day, explore algae or make slime. Nature walk, look for bugs, collect leaves, learn about trees. Mark felt encouraged. This wasn't just about creating memories. It was a way to instill curiosity and resilience in Jake, nurturing an emotional landscape for them both. Yet, the reality of his 9-to-5 job loomed large in the back of his mind. How could he carve out time before and after work? He could sense the familiar, deadline-driven pace of his office life, a world far removed from Jake's universe of crafts and fantasy. Mark grappled with his instincts urging him to make performance-driven sacrifices in order to improve financially. Could he surrender those ambitions when they seemed the invisible barrier to his relationship with Jake? That evening, as the clock ticked towards bedtime, he found himself drawn toward a discussion he had been avoiding: his work. "Dad, are you going to the office tomorrow?" Jake asked while trying to fit his toys into a box, nestled in the radiant glow of the lamp's light. "I am, buddy," Mark replied, his tone laced with an underlying heaviness. "But we have our rocket project after dinner later in the week. I'll help you finish it the night before we launch it." Jake looked up, disappointment flickering across his young face. but I want to do it tomorrow. Caught in the crosshairs of his son's hope and his own obligations, Mark felt the internal tension mount. How about we save that for the next day instead? I promise I'll keep it as a priority, he added, though internally he questioned if he could maintain that promise. The look in Jake's eyes didn't easily fade. This was a clear indication of an expectation Mark had unintentionally set. He gazed into his son's hopeful, trusting expression and felt a sudden resolve grow inside him. Could he show Jake that commitment and creativity mattered even amidst his demanding career? The next day at work, Mark found himself surrounded by a buzzing environment, racing to meet deadlines. Midway through a conference call, he felt detached, most of his thoughts orbiting back to the moments of joy he shared with Jake. He knew that this wasn't exactly the life he had envisioned, but neither did he want to be the person who sacrificed his relational investment just to rise professionally. During the lunch break, a deep sense of urgency brewed within him. He recalled how he hastily dismissed the importance of family activities in favor of work meetings. In a moment of clarity, Mark acknowledged that it wasn't a matter of choosing one over the other. He needed to recalibrate. He could harness the thrill of creativity and be fully present at home, while simultaneously harnessing professionalism. Maybe I could switch to flexible hours or remote work to stay involved with Jake during the day once in a while, he pondered, letting the idea take shape. If he could prove to himself that pleasure and responsibility could synchronize, he could elevate his home life beyond mere routine. Later that evening, as the dinner dishes were cleared away, Mark approached Jake to talk about his day. How would you feel if we could have a special rocket day together every week? Just like today? He asked, feeling more resolute. Every week? That's like a real mission. Jake exploded into laughter, throwing his hands up in excitement. Mark joined in the laughter, feeling lighter. But was this commitment too grand? Could he truly keep this sustainable? With every choice he made, Mark knew he was heading into territory laden with challenges, questioning if he would become just another dad with unfulfilled promises. Determined to navigate ahead, he said, "Let us map out a rocket calendar. Together we can color in what each launch day will look like." Jake grinned, eyes wide with innocent excitement. And it struck Mark, then the commitment was not only about ensuring fun for Jake, but also about cultivating his own resilience and adaptability to not let work overshadow their adventures. But amongst this newfound hope, Mark felt a shadow lurking. Could he truly balance his ambitions and his commitments? The struggle for equilibrium awaited him as he tucked Jake into bed. Just before closing the door, he whispered, "Can you keep a secret? I want you to help me build the calendar tomorrow." Jake nodded, excitement brimming. But a latent fear gnawed at Mark's resolve, the chance that his aspirations may still collide dangerously with their scheduled adventures. How far could he bend his routine before it snapped? Tomorrow was still a mystery, and despite the laughter echoing in the hall, one thought persisted. Could he truly juggle the demands of his day job with crafting a new world of joy for his son? The process ahead was still unwritten, filled with unpredictable turns. The morning sun crept through the blinds, casting stripes of light across the cluttered kitchen where Mark sat, a cascade of thoughts swirling in his mind. Driven by the clarity he felt the night before, he reached for his laptop, determined to explore potential options for flexible hours. As he navigated through the employer's intranet, doubts crept in, the same doubts that had always nagged at him. What if the request went unheard, or, worse, he was seen as lacking commitment? A knot tightened in his stomach as he considered the implications. The company encouraged innovation and work-life balance, but was he ready to be the first to push for change? His thumb hovered over the submit button after drafting an email to his manager, yet he hesitated. The office culture had discouraged vulnerability, replacing it with a facade of productivity. "Breathe," he whispered to himself, the sound echoing in the stillness of the morning. Suddenly, an image of Jake giggling, enveloped in colorful bubbles during their last adventure, flooded his mind. They had spent an hour simply marveling at the way they floated and burst, creating a sanctuary of laughter amidst the chaos of his work life. If that memory could provide such clarity, perhaps it was time to advocate for a shift in his own existence. With newfound determination, Mark clicked send, his heart pounding in rhythm with his racing thoughts. Would this be the defining moment? Could he inspire not just a change in his routine, but also a paradigm shift in how he approached fatherhood? As the hours crept along, work demands escalated. Calls exchanged pleasantries and frustrations, but Mark found himself detaching from the whirlwind. Instead, his thoughts danced back to the promise he had made to Jake about their weekly rocket days. He began to envision projected timelines filled with vibrant colors and scribbled ideas for adventures. That evening, under the dim glow of their living room lamp, Mark and Jake bent over a large sheet of paper strewn with colored markers, preparing to create their rocket calendar. "Okay, Jake," Mark said with enthusiasm, "what is first on our mission?" "Bubbles," Jake exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Can we do bubble rockets?" "Of course." The sheer notion ignited a spark within Mark. The juxtaposition of science and play would not only nurture Jake's creativity, but also bridge the gap between their worlds. They jotted down plans for construction and decorations alongside the bubbling experiments. Each idea they penned highlighted the potential for learning disguised as sheer joy. Amidst the artistry unfolding between them, Mark felt a shift. Something deeper was igniting within him. It was more than just a calendar. It was an acknowledgement of his potential to balance professionalism and fatherhood while nurturing Jake's curiosity. Later that night, as Mark tucked Jake into bed, he hesitated, wrestling with unvoiced fears. What if his request for flexible hours unfurled its own set of complications? What if the very change he sought frightened him more than the status quo? A whirlwind of reluctance threatened to spill into the quiet moments shared with his son. "Dad," Jake's voice pierced the silence, pulling Mark back. "Will we really make the rocket together?" "Absolutely, we will," Mark rasped, feeling the weight of his assurances. The honesty in his son's gaze pierced through his uncertainties. He would not let Jake down. This was not just a project. It was a promise, a thread connecting them through spontaneity in a predictable world that he turned off the lights. Mark's stomach clenched. The path ahead loomed with uncertainty, but it felt undeniably imperative to pursue it both for Jake and himself. A call to action nestled in his heart, an immediate request for evolving his role against the current of his professional identity. Tomorrow would be pivotal. He had set the stage for adventure, yet the question simmered. Could he fully relinquish fear to chase both dreams and family legacies? In the night's hollow stillness, shadows clashed with his fervent hopes. Would he rise to meet the challenge? A palpable tension hung in the air as Mark drifted off, ready to wrangle with his apprehensions and awaken the multifaceted man he aimed to become. How would he confront his fears at the office? Tomorrow loomed a catalyst waiting for resolution. Mark's eyes flickered open as dawn spilled through his bedroom window. Today was pivotal. Today, he would confront his fears and present his request. Each tick of the clock echoed like a countdown, building the tension coiling in his chest. He sat on the edge of his bed, reminding himself, one step at a time. The shower's cool water washed over him, not merely cleansing his body, but awakening a sense of resolve. He let the droplets run their course, mentally rehearsing his words, contemplating the potential results. Would his supervisor listen? Would she share his vision? He envisioned the conversation like a rocket launch, carefully planned, but potentially explosive. Arriving at the office, the familiar hum of chatter and rapid clicking from keyboards settled over him like a heavy blanket. Mark approached his desk, taking a moment to breathe deeply and absorb his surroundings. The usual atmosphere of urgency clawed at his confidence, but he held firm. He was no longer just a cog in the machine. He was a father with a mission that as the morning wore on, he steadied his resolve, gathering paperwork for his meeting. Each document represented a different facet of his work-life balance plan: flexible hours, project timelines, and a schedule that allowed him to engage with Jake. The thought of their burgeoning rocket project fueled his determination. When the meeting finally arrived, Mark entered the conference room, where his manager sat poised, a sea of indifference behind her glasses. He felt a flicker of vulnerability creep in as he began to outline his needs, but he held tight to the vision of Jake happily blowing bubbles. Mark spoke with clarity, discussing how flexibility could enhance his productivity rather than detract from it. "And why do you think this is necessary, Mark?" she asked, skepticism woven into her tone. The question hung heavy, and Mark's stomach churned. "Because my role as a father matters as much as my role here," he replied, finding a surprising firmness within his voice. "I want to ensure I'm present for my son, just as I am present for my team." Her gaze was penetrating, yet he could sense a slight softening. "Family is certainly important, Mark, but the expectations in this environment it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game." He interrupted, emboldened by his vision. "We can innovate how we approach productivity without sacrificing our duties at home." A silence enveloped them, and Mark's heart raced. Would she dismiss him outright? Would he have to bear the weight of skepticism once again? As the tension in the room stretched, something shifted within him. He realized he was reclaiming a narrative that had long belonged solely to others. The fear of judgment faded, replaced by an exhilarating rush. This was about more than flexible hours. It was about redefining what it meant to fulfill multiple roles in life, and reclaiming the joys often overshadowed by professional demands. "I need to make room in my life for exploration and play. It's critical," he asserted, sharing his apprehensions and hopes for Jake's future. His manager leaned back, crossing her arms as she absorbed his words. "Let us discuss some options then." As they began hashing out a potential plan, Mark felt a swell of relief and pride. Though uncertainty still lingered, today marked a pivotal transition. He was stepping away from self-doubt. Representing more than himself, he was embodying his aspirations for his son and their shared adventures. Leaving the meeting, Mark's heart soared. Maybe this was the start of something significant. Perhaps, just perhaps, he would navigate both his professional and personal ambitions with newfound vigor. But as the day progressed, a disquieting thought nagged at him. What if this conversation came with unexpected strings attached? What if he had opened a Pandora's box of complexities he hadn't foreseen? Eager yet anxious, he paced back to his desk, anticipation buzzing in the air. He could see the vision of their rocket in the sky, glittering against a backdrop of uncertainty, and wondered exactly what the next chapter of his journey would bring. Could his leap of faith truly lead to a new way of life? The sun streamed through Mark's window, illuminating the room with a golden glow that felt more promising than ever before. Today marked a milestone not just in his professional life, but in his personal journey as a father. He could feel the energy of transformation coursing through him, no longer just an entrepreneur, but a devoted father ready to reclaim that role fiercely. He recalled the exhilarating conversation with his manager yesterday. Advocating for flexible hours had shaken loose more than he anticipated. It was a release from dormant fears. The lurking anxiety was there, but the room for growth felt infinite, pulsating with possibility. Mark crafted today's plans with excitement coursing through his veins. Determined to create another joyous experience with Jake, he was ready to take risks and embrace vulnerability. Arriving home after work, Mark set the stage with meticulous care. With colorful markers and construction paper scattered across the dining table, he worked feverishly to transform their home into a makeshift creative hub. Today, they would build a model rocket together, a symbol of their burgeoning bond. As he organized the supplies, flashes of their previous adventures filled him with inspiration. With each cut and fold, Mark realized he was actively bonding with Jake, crafting not just a rocket, but strengthening the fabric of their relationship. Jake bounded into the room, eyes sparkling with anticipation. "What are we doing today, Dad?" he asked, enthusiasm radiating from his small frame. "We're going to build something amazing," Mark responded, smiling broadly. "Are you ready to launch our first mission?" "Yeah," Jake shouted, bursting into laughter. That simple moment sparked joy in Mark's heart. They gathered materials, and Mark guided Jake while encouraging him to take the lead. With each swirl of marker, Jake's creativity flourished. "Look at my design. It's going to fly super high." He beamed. The culmination of this project would go beyond mere play. It was a vessel, carrying their newfound commitment to embrace the joyous unpredictability of life together. Mark was living proof that transforming fatherhood into something extraordinary was possible, that a rich and fulfilling family life complemented his professional aspirations rather than hindered them. As they worked through the evening, a beautiful rhythm developed. Mark demonstrated, and Jake innovated. Every component they created was a small victory in restructuring their relationship. With each laugh, Mark felt the weight of self-doubt dissipating, replaced by admiration for Jake's imagination. When they finally stood back to admire the completed rocket, a sense of accomplishment washed over Mark. "This is going to soar, buddy," he exclaimed, admiration lacing his voice. Jake's eyes sparkled with pride, and Mark found himself lost in the moment, the noise of expectations and looming deadlines fading into the background. He realized this was what he truly wanted, moments like this, filled with connection and laughter. That evening, as they sat together sharing ideas for future missions, Mark felt recognition blossoming within him. He was no longer merely reacting to the tides of uncertainty. He was actively steering his ship towards uncharted waters of emotional connectedness. Tomorrow was a promise, a day filled with adventures, memories, and unrestrained joy. Through direct action, Mark had redefined not only his role as a father, but developed a profound understanding of what it meant to truly matter to himself and to Jake. This was the beginning of a legacy he would champion unflinchingly. A lifetime of exploration intertwined with the simple joys of bubbles, rockets, and laughter. With a heart brimming with gratitude, he positioned their crafted rocket in a place of honor. Today had transcended the efforts spent on work commitments. It was a celebration of what it meant to be present as a father, a reminder of the brilliance waiting to unfold with each passing day. In this profound moment, Mark recognized his evolution. He had conquered his internal struggles and proven his commitment to fostering a future filled with joy. Through these shared experiences, he had not only transformed his authority as a father, but also stepped into more profound self-acceptance. He stood firmly anchored in the realization that fulfillment came from the balance he could now sustain. His chest puffed with pride. He could indeed achieve both personal and professional success without sacrificing joy. As he turned off the lights, Mark's resolve solidified. He would be the father Jake needed, not just in fleeting moments, but every day forward. It was time to embrace this new path. It was more than a call to action, it was the essence of who he had become. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting our journey through these actions.